Alright, my friends, today we're going to be talking about things that make UFC fighters perform better. Things that happen outside of the cage that give our favorite fighters buffs or power ups inside of the cage. And these are going to be things that go a little bit deeper than eating 3 square meals, getting your 8 hours, and drinking water. Speaking of which, let's all take a hydration break before we get started because I need some water right now. Let's all drink some water together. That was delicious, man. Quick little hydration break. Make sure that you're getting your H2O in. Let's get right into the list, boys. So the first thing up on the list is going to be divorce. This makes champions. Mackenzie Dern locked in for the betterment of her family, for herself, after she got absolutely worked in a custody battle. Her ex-husband was like this pro surfer guy. It's something Santos, I think. Everybody was saying that guy disses whenever he was happily in love with Mackenzie Dern. And then they break up. And Mackenzie Dern is in interviews talking about how like he is absolutely clapping her with child support. He took the kids and is like caring for him because she's like focused on fighting, right? She's paying so much money in alimony to this guy who has her daughter. I'm not too well versed in that side of like legal stuff, but if I'm not mistaken, California as far as like child support stuff goes is really bad, dude. Like it's really bad. So she's getting dogged. She literally became champion because she needed this like pay increase in order to afford not being married to her ex-husband, which is messed up, but we can't say that this didn't help her lock in. She's got the belt as we're talking right now. So I mean, look at what her love failing ended up doing for her professional career. The same thing goes for Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott used to train at a gym called Gloria MMA with his ex-wife Gina Mazzini and the guy who she was cheating on him with named Kevin Kroom, who was a close friend of both of them because they were all training partners together. So like this dude Kevin Kroom was there at his wedding with Gina Mazzini, and apparently they hooked up that night that they had gotten married. Tim Elliott has been spending so much time away from the octagon before his last fight with Tatsuro Taira, battling for custody of his kids in court, fighting super regularly otherwise because he's been so tied up with what's been happening with his ex-wife. He's talked about firsthand like how it makes you just feel so mentally drained dealing with this and how you want to be the best parent to your child and how these types of things make it so that you can't and how like empty and broken that makes you feel because he said in his own words in an interview, I'll never forget this. Tim Elliott said, "I felt like not the best fighter before, but I've never felt like not the best father before." And for that to have been something that was a reality for me, it hurts me like no other pain I've ever felt. So I can only imagine what Ilia Topuria must be encountering. His children are really young. Hugo doesn't look to be a day over the age of 4 years old. And he posted his daughter on his story the other day, and she's like an infant baby still. So he's going to be going through the ringer with this woman that he just separated from in terms of like custody battles and child support until they're 18 years old. So he has a really long ride ahead of him. Hopefully this doesn't force him to deviate off of his path towards becoming the greatest combat athlete to ever fight in the UFC. He's taking a step away from the sport until spring of this year in order to sort out things that are going on in the court. The custody battle may actually take longer than he's anticipating, so like God help this man. I have no details on what type of woman his ex-wife was because there were no real public appearances made between the both of them. The only thing that's really been ousted is like public information is that the reason why they've separated is because Ilia Topuria was getting active in the Instagram DMs of like whoever the hell that wasn't his wife. It's a very public and messy thing that was going on. Ilia Topuria separated from his woman. He started posting pictures with a bunch of different girls on his Instagram. He was getting lit at nightclubs with live performers and dancing and stuff. And I was like, look, he's doing good. We're going to see him soon. Ilia Topuria, he's fine. He's fine. And then he started getting real sad, not posting at all, talking about like how much family meant to him, posting about his son, posting, I try to take people to the top with me who never wanted to see me win. And I knew that the final nail in the coffin was after his brother's win. He didn't even let it breathe for a little bit or celebrate with additional posts going into the next week. He just posted like 1 or 2 times the fact that he was proud of Alexander. And then he got on his Instagram story and posted a photo of him holding his baby daughter and was like, "I miss you every day, my little girl." And I was like, oh. Yeah, he's down bad. And then he came out with the news that he's going to be taking a hiatus from fighting until he can get all of it situated. So, I mean, it's a hell of a thing. I'm a product of divorce, man. It's the reason why I got into training MMA and why I love watching this sport so much. I feel for Hugo and that girl who have to grow up. I mean, luckily, my parents didn't separate until, like, I was what, like 16? So it was only like 2 years worth of like the custody stuff that they had to negotiate, and everything ended up honestly going pretty amicably for both of them. At least with like visitation and stuff. It's just a bad situation. I hope somebody is there, whether it's his brother or like another woman or something, holding down Ilya Taporia, because I mean, it's usually the men who get it the worst in these types of situations. Whether or not he brought on the separation of his wife or not, it's really none of our business. I just hope that he's going to be good and he can figure this out and get back to the UFC octagon whenever he's ready. Whenever he does come back, though, I'm expecting there to be unbridled hatred in both of his hands, delivering lead hooks with 5,000 newtons of pure rage into whoever's face that he's match made with on his return. Whether it be Patty or Gaethje, he's going to be in the clinch with one of those guys, pressing him up against a cage, and they're just going to hear, "I loved her. I can't believe she did what she did to me." And they're just going to be mad confused, and he's going to break and separate, and then hit them with the cleanest and hardest three-piece that's ever touched their chin. We need to definitely give this guy some space, dude, because this is just, it's a bad situation. I don't wish this on anybody. I'm not a father, but I can only imagine what, like, not being able to be there for your kids must mean to you as somebody who, like, really values family. Very sad stuff. But I can't lie, it definitely does improve the athletic performances of some. The next thing that we're going to be discussing, which is a little bit less heavy, is going to be going up a weight class. It's helped many of our favorite fighters who are becoming favorites. Sam Patterson, namely, was a 6'3", 155-pound fighter. That doesn't even sound right. Being that tall at a weight class where you have no durability because you're weight draining so much isn't even an advantage, and it's just going to get you chinned by a guy who is going to get a highlight who, I mean, deserve it or not, he's just going to knock you out. Yanal Ashmouz was the guy who flatlined Sam Patterson. Yanal Ashmouz, who's not even in the UFC anymore because he just doesn't have the skill set in order to keep up with the upper echelons of this division. He got a cheeky win over the guy Sam Patterson, who's been on a KO streak at 170 pounds. Moving up a weight class, this guy Sam Patterson has gotten wins over Kiefer Crosby, and then he was given Danny Barlow, right? Danny Barlow, who was supposed to be like one of the best unranked prospects at 170 and in the UFC, knocks out Danny Barlow at 170 since this is his proper weight class. He could even stand to be a middleweight, but if he's a hard gainer or feels comfortable at 170 pounds where he is successful, then just let him rock out. He got his next fight scheduled against Trey Waters. That's a 6'5" welterweight, and that's another dude who probably should go up to middleweight, because, I mean, 170 at 6'5" is ridiculous. Trey Waters got sparked by Sam Patterson, too, who's more of a welterweight than he is. It's the only way I can put that. He's more of a welterweight than Trey Waters is. Trey Waters is more of a middleweight, or even a 205er. Sometimes it really isn't that you're a bad fighter, you're just not at the right weight class. You're cutting too much weight. It was that exact instance for Charles Oliveira, who was a 145er in his early career. He started at 155, cut down to 145, had a really spotty record there, and then went back to 155 in, I think, 2017 and just locked in. He's always had the jiu-jitsu, but he didn't have any of the survivability or durability that he has at 155 pounds du Bronx. His striking was still coming together as well. But that 10-pound increase can take you from being a paper soldier to literally making you into a champion-level fighter at this new division. We're seeing the same thing happen in the context of Vitor Petrino, right? Vitor Petrino getting subbed by Anthony Smith at 205 pounds. Going up to heavyweight, getting knockouts, notching very easy submissions because he's always been a solid grappler for light heavyweight. Lighter man skill is a real thing. If you go up a weight class, you have better durability because you're not weight draining. We've already established that weight bullying isn't always advantageous. And you get to escape an uber dominant champion, like in the context of a 155er during like the Khabib, Islam, Charles Oliveira era. If you have the frame and skill set for 170, why not go up the additional weight class to challenge a Leon Edwards, or to challenge a division run by Bilal Muhammad, or even like a Jack Della Maddalena? These guys who most likely aren't going to have as long of reigns as these legacy fighters at the lower weight classes, like Volkanovski, like Ilya Taporia. There's no reason to stick around because, I mean, unless you're super convinced that you can be competitive with fighters that good, there's no reason for you to not try your luck in a division that has a less dominant champion. Just as going up a weight class can be advantageous, going down a weight class can be equally as opportune to fighters who may not be what they initially were. In terms of a fighter, say like Gabe Green, who was a 170-pound guy, lost a fight to Ian Gary, lost a fight to Brian Battle. He's getting finished in some of these fights too. It's not good. You're losing longevity in your career. Whenever maybe it is that these guys are just hitting harder than you possibly can output in terms of power. Maybe your skills aren't really going to be revealed until you commit to losing that extra 10 or 15 pounds in order for you to make it down to a lower weight class. And then you may be skating down easy street for a little bit. If it's something that your body agrees with, then I think it's worth a shot. Certain fighters like Charles Jourdain or Gabe Green, who were largely decision fighters, they got finishes in their debuts down a weight class. Most of the time, whenever we talk about fighters moving down, it's because they call them like tweeners. And that's like, these are guys like how people said that Kevin Lee would dominate and be champion of like a 165-pound division. They're not quite lightweights, but they're not quite welterweights, you know? They just kind of fit somewhere in the middle of the two. Most of the time, whenever fighters do fit this description, they benefit from going down a weight class and fighting at the lower weight. Because it's not everything, but having a size advantage over your opponent, it does matter and counts for a lot. Because you benefit by having increased knockout power. You have strength in the grappling over guys that you wouldn't have those same advantages over up a weight class. Sometimes you just got to test the waters. Like Bryce Mitchell. Or it seems like the only thing that's really left for you to do once you've hit a dead end in your career at your current weight class, where it's like, I've gotten to the highest ranking that I could possibly achieve with my skills and body at 145 pounds, unless I start taking steroids or find the hyperbolic time chamber. Maybe it's time for me to try things out at 135 pounds. Cuts that additional 10, gets a fight with Said Nurmagomedov. It wasn't the easiest win, but I mean, Said, that's the name, and he beat that guy, and he's on his way to becoming ranked at 135 pounds now, Bryce Mitchell is. Sometimes it's just what you got to do. These two changes actually do make a difference whenever they're done properly. They could definitely enhance a fighter's potential and make them perform better. Having a baby is the next thing that we're going to be talking about, and no, none of these fighters had a baby. Their women had babies, or at the time they were pregnant. So, I mean, what is it about dad's strength? Like, dads hit twice as hard? I forgot who said that. I think Jan Blachowicz did, because he also had a child not too long ago. This was before he became champion, I think. Or like right as he fought Dominic Reyes, he had gotten dad strength. And there's a lot of different layers to this. Johnny Walker had said about his newborn son that he wants to be able to have his boy grow up. Whenever he's a retired UFC fighter, show him footage of his fights after he was born and be like, look, your dad is really cool. He used to knock people out in the MMA octagon. Completely understandable as like a desire that you may have to show your son like, this is who you come from. This is your pops. Because your son can go to school and be like, yo, my dad was low-key him, bro. Look at this fight footage of my dad leg kick TKOing Mingyang Zhang in China. Because if he didn't do that and just called it a career right now, the kids on the playground would have been going up to his son and being like, yo, is this your pops? And then showing him like the Ozdemir fights or Magomed Ankalaev versus Walker too. And nobody wants to go out like that. So this is motivation, dude. Free motivation, having a child with your woman. Diapers are also super expensive. To raise a baby, especially in the United States, it is so expensive. So, I mean, it makes sense why you want to be able to fight and earn if, like, you are welcoming children into this world, because that's a big financial responsibility that you have as a provider. In the UFC, you kind of make your own luck in terms of, like, what fights you accept, how often you fight. Waldo Cortez Acosta wanted 3 fights in 6 weeks because he just had his 9th child. I said before, 10 children, 9 babies, 10 mouths to feed, including his wife at the dinner table. Imagine how long that dining room table must be for all of them to sit at it. It probably looks like the one inside of Yar Vasker in Whiterun, where all the companions sit down. You're no longer fighting for yourself either. At my job, there's this dude who has 2 jobs. He has children, he does overnights at a hotel, and then he comes to do day shifts at my job. And we do 10-hour shifts there. And this guy goes back to back between both locations on like 3 hours of sleep. And that's because he has to. That guy's paying rent, he's buying food for his kids, doing what he's got to do for his family, you know? I'm working just to buy Red Bulls and like Fortnite skins, dude. It's a different level of grind. How far you're willing to go as a man with children is just, it's not even comparable to a dude who's just in it for himself. We also have switching gyms and head coaches is another thing that can take your game up as a fighter. Having your coach give you instructions tailored to your skill set is very important. Benoit Saint-Denis is a prime example of this. He left his old coach in the dust, started training at the MMA factory with Nasruddin Imavov, Cyril Gane, the best French MMA fighters in that entire country. And now look at how he's completely 180'd his career post losing to Moicano. Khalil Roundtree left his American gym, went to Thailand, became Bangkok ready over there, and now he's a top contender at light heavyweight. Sometimes you literally just need a different voice screaming at you in between rounds. Justin Gaethje, dropping his old camp, going to train at Team Elevation with Trevor Whitman. Sometimes you need a voice to not scream at you at all, because Trevor Whitman doesn't really even do that with his fighters. And because he's calm, he spawned calm Gaethje, who has an opportunity to become the interim champ over Paddy Pimblett. You will never reach the apex of your abilities receiving bad coaching. That's why whenever sports teams, right, that fail in championship opportunities, they fire their head coach as one of the first orders of business. Because it's really not all the players. It's always going to be either you or your coach that's the problem. It's not an even split either, but sometimes you do need a guy to tell you, look, we're down 2 rounds and we need to finish. Or if it's 1-1, you just drop 2 rounds. We need you to lock in and go out there and show them what for. Sometimes you need a guy to take a little swig of water and miss it in your face like Triple H. Having a good head coach most certainly improves the performances of fighters. Sometimes what you really need is just to get beat up really badly or KO'd in order to lock in. This is a make or break thing, but it's only really a thing that breaks fighters who aren't at an elite level. If you're a real boss, you know how to take a loss, rhyming accidentally. Before it was a joke about the eagle rebirth, where it's like you go into the cave and you pluck your feathers and you rip off your beak and pick out your talons. You live another 20 years or you can die right there. But I mean, there's something to it. Look at fighters like Neil Magny. They just take their lumps in stride and they come back and it's like water off of a duck's back. Never lose 2 in a row. And if you do lose 2 in a row, don't lose 3 in a row. Grant Dawson chinned by Bobby Green. Now he's ranked. Charles Oliveira sparked up by Ilia Topuria. Makes a turnaround in like 105 days, which on the basis of like a 6-month concussion protocol, that's like a little bit over half the time that would have been recommended for him to actually take off in order to be at full health going into his next fight. But nah, man, I want to get this back. I got to lock in, bro. Do you see what happened to me last time? There's another dude who's fighting for family. Charles Oliveira locked in. He successfully completed his Eagle rebirth. It's never fair to rule a possibility of a fighter coming back from a one-sided beatdown or an instance of them being KO'd completely out of the picture until it happens twice. This kind of goes hand in hand with the last thing that we talked about, but losing your O if you're an undefeated fighter is also something that makes you step your game up. I feel like a lot of undefeated fighters, they be thinking shit is sweet, bro. Like, oh yeah, I'm undefeated now. It's because I'm that good. Nobody can beat me and I'll never lose. So I don't need to put in that extra effort into my training. Maybe I can cut this corner and it's going to be cool. After all, I am the best in the world. Nobody can defeat me because they haven't yet in 18 fights or 16 fights or 11 fights. Or if you have lost and you've been in the UFC, just finishing everyone, right? Like Carlos Prates, who has losses outside of the UFC before Ian Gary. My dog was on like a 3-fight KO streak. And being undefeated in the UFC is practically like being undefeated in your entire MMA career. If you're not losing at the highest level of competition, who cares about a Muay Thai fight or some regional promotion as a pro MMA fighter where you got rear naked choked and you were like super green and inexperienced? Who cares about that? That's so easily omittable if you have the UFC resume to completely nullify all that happened in the past. But just pay attention to this chain of events. Ian Gary comes out, winning fights, was finishing them at first, but just consistently winning decisions. He was winning all of his fights up until he fought Shavkat. Still a very close fight that he lost. I know that hurts him so bad. Even still, looking at that one in the loss column, he copes and still says things like he feels like he didn't even lose the Shavkat fight. And that's just for him. Like Sean O'Malley talking about, yeah, I'm mentally undefeated. That's the type of mentality that you need to have. People call you delusional for it, but you can't dwell on your losses, man. You can't even acknowledge them most of the time, other than the lesson that you learned from the experience of losing and moving forward and pursuing the aspiration that you have of becoming the best in the world. That's a completely healthy mindset, in my opinion. But Ian Gary loses to Shavkat, makes the adjustments that are required in order to win a fight up against a very hot and upcoming prospect in Carlos Prates, guy on a finish streak, very dangerous, most dangerous fighter at 170. Gives him his first loss in the UFC. Ian Gary is now the number 1 contender of this division, having beaten the XX champion in Bilal Muhammad. And now Carlos Prates completely bounced back from the first UFC loss that he took to Ian Gary and fights against Jeff Neal and in Leon Edwards, where he just got right back on the horse, securing his early round knockouts. And that's because experience comes at a cost. And MMA isn't boxing either, so taking a couple of losses at the highest level of this sport, it's not going to make it so that people aren't going to be able to be a fan of you anymore. It's not going to make it so that they're going to talk about you're not who you say you are. Context matters. It's not all or nothing where it's like you either lose or you don't lose. It's just that your resume is heavily aided if you do not have any losses on it, like Jones or like Khabib. Nobody's going to make the argument that Islam Makhachev doesn't deserve to be number 1 pound for pound on the basis of having a loss to Adriano Martins from forever ago. And that's something that I feel like I do pride the MMA fan base for, is being able to understand context. Undefeated fighters who are young, more often than not, end up having their best performances and get significantly better at fighting after they take their first career loss. The next thing that we discuss is holding a grudge. If you're in a fight with somebody who you just straight up dislike, that's going to give you a fight boost, no doubt, every single time. Every single time that there's legit animosity between two different fighters, we usually get a great performance out of the guy who just has more hate in his heart for the other guy. We saw this in the McGregor-Poirier build-up, and we saw this in Harrison versus Pena. The build-ups are also very memorable too, with like McGregor and like the Jolie's wife thing, and he was saying that Dustin Poirier's wife was his husband. Dustin Poirier wanted to break this man's face so badly. Conor McGregor clearly broke his leg, throwing that kick that Dustin Poirier had checked and causing that fracture. Dustin Poirier thought nothing of it, and he just jumped right into the guard of Conor McGregor and finished him on the floor there. Very nasty ground and pound up against a compromised Conor McGregor who had his leg flopping around like a sock puppet. Yo, you just scared the fuck out of me, dog. I'm recording right now, gang. Hold on. This also helps with selling the fight. Pena going on like this media campaign to talk about how Amanda Nunes ran from her. She had like the printed out pictures and shit on Ariel Helwani talking about Kayla Harrison is a cheater, pumpkin eater. Talking about what she's going to do to Kayla Harrison because what she did to Amanda Nunes and how she's the greatest woman fighter of all time. How Kayla Harrison lost to Larissa Pacheco in PFL and just being annoying. We all wanted to see Juliana Pena get humbled for this. And Kayla Harrison, equally as bad, wanted to humble Juliana Pena for all the trash she was talking in the build-up of their fight. And we got it. Real beef makes for more fun fights. And you can really tell every single time that two fighters heavily dislike each other. This is definitely an additive that puts a lot more pepper on these matchups and makes them much more enjoyable for our viewership. The next thing that we're going to discuss is needing money. We all need money. They had my boy Pantoja out here driving Uber Eats. Like Alexandre is delivering your QPC ETA 35 minutes. And he did that because rent was due. People needed him. Whether or not he was mismanaging his funds, that's none of our goddamn business. They needed money, and so they're going to be putting in really good performances so that they can get to that guala for their families. Most of the time it is family men. And they're clamming for these bonuses, and they fight like their lives are on the line because the livelihood of the people that they care about actually is. They're not performing out of just the express purpose of getting rich. In most instances, at least, it's not to put themselves in the Rolls Royce. It's so that they can have their family not starve. Or if their family lives in a bad area, they want to move them out of this bad area where they're safer and more comfortable. Watching the people around you suffer is real pain. Chris Padilla was talking about he needs that 50K because like his mom is messed up right now, dude. Jared Cannonier was calling for additional fights after beating Kelvin Gastelum because they had a guy doing the breakdown. And it's like between the gym, your manager, your personal expenses are like 10% of whatever you may get out of your purse, depending on what your contract is. It's expensive to be a fighter. I hope we all make it. I know for a fact we're all going to make it. So yeah, that's my list, you guys. Let me know if there's anything that I might have missed in the things that I did mention that act as buffs, potions of strength for these different fighters in the UFC. Thank you guys for supporting the content. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be back with another upload very soon. Peace out, my brothers. Have a wonderful day.